Davey?
Here.
Councilmember Lauredo?
Here.
Councilmember London? Councilmember London, are you here? He's eating. Councilmember London, are you here? Can't hear him, but he's here. Councilmember McCormick?
Here.
Vice Mayor Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Petros?
Here.
Councilmember Segurola?
Here.
We do have a quorum, Mr. Mayor. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of
of the United States of America, and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and
and
justice.
justice for all. First item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
All right, I just have a few, and then, let me know as we go around. Look, I want to thank everybody for everything. I want to thank staff for everything they're doing, how hard they're working on this. I know how stressful this is. I want to thank the community for doing what they've been doing. I'm seeing more people out there with masks. I'm seeing retail stores. I'm seeing people really take social distancing seriously. I know the Winn-Dixie is trying to limit the number of people in and out. That's been a concern. So I just want to thank people for doing this. I also want to say, we got into some discussions on Thursday, and I want to be clear because I've been reminded of this before, and I want to remind us all now. We're to set policy. The administration is to implement that policy. And I think sometimes we get caught up. We all want to do the right thing. We all have really good intentions. But it's our job to set policy and then allow the administration to use their skills and their knowledge and experience to actually put those to move those things forward. So I just want to remind us as we go into tonight, whatever conversations we're having, let's let the folks that we've hired to do a job do the job. That's my recommendation. Who wants to make a comment? Okay. Moving on.
Right.
Councilmember McCormick.
I just wanted to echo the mayor's sentiments and join in the thanks for our village staff for the work they're doing under really very difficult circumstances. I'd specifically like to call out our public safety. They're doing an extraordinary job, and I'm hopeful that tonight we'll get to have an opportunity to hear from the chiefs directly of sort of what they're doing. I think the community would feel good if we have that opportunity. So I just wanted to personally echo those sentiments and give my gratitude.
Thank you. Councilmember Laredo?
Thank you. I echo that, and I wanted to know if you can, or the manager or the chiefs can briefly tell us before we start on the agenda how the offices on the line on both departments doing health-wise, and also just under the stress they're under. Do we need something?
Okay.
The police officers and the fire and rescue.
You want to have that? Where would you want to have that? I was thinking, we've got a fairly short agenda, so maybe we do that after we get through the two items and then just have detailed.
Yes, sir.
Let's do that.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Let's put that under agenda additions, deletions. Any other council members? Okay, let's move on.
Okay, the next item, Mr. Mayor, is agenda approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to defer the application that is
Item 10A.
10A to April 28th.
Second.
Okay.
Who seconded it for the record?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
What is it?
Mr. Attorney, do I need to do a roll call?
Hold on one second. Will we do that separately and then do additions and deletions, or do we do this?
I think you just made this motion, so
We'll do this first.
oh, because you wanted to add Councilmember Lauredo's.
Yeah, Councilmember Laredo had some points to add, and then there may be other people who want to add things. So I want to make sure everybody gets a shot. Anybody else?
It's
Addition?
up to you.
I'm wondering, do we have added to this agenda at the last meeting last week? I believe Councilmember Petros asked us to sort of put our thinking caps on and see if there were any ideas we had of things we could be working on during this time, sort of reallocating our resources. Is that going to be on tonight's agenda? I had some thoughts.
Okay.
Yes, we can discuss that, Mayor, in our, on the resolution on, with regard to COVID. We do talk about our continuity of operations.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then Councilmember Laredo's point as to an update from our chiefs and our manager as to our public safety officers.
We have that in our game plan as well for the resolution item.
Okay. So I think, Councilmember Petros, I see you waving your hand.
We had a discussion last week, but I think we should follow up with a discussion on policy for testing out on the island for the COVID virus.
Okay. So we'll make that 11A3.
That wouldn't be under the resolution? No? Can, Councilmember Petros,
I
can
guess it's true.
you,
I guess is everything we're going to discuss on COVID under the resolution?
my manager?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
Okay, well then.
Eliminated.
Yeah, no, then we don't need to add that item. So none of these things so far. Other than the deferral, it sounds like everything's really going to be under the emergency order anyway.
Right. This is a message for Peter in IT. Our village attorney cannot unmute himself.
Where is he? I lost him.
Understood. On it.
Thank you. So on the motion to defer item 10A to the April 28th meeting, do I need a roll call for this, Chad?
No, it can just be all in favor.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is, hold on.
Approval of the minutes.
The approval of the minutes of the March 9th, 2020 council meeting.
Move.
It was Davey
Second.
and
London.
London. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, confirming a declaration of a state of emergency due to novel coronavirus COVID-19, ratifying and approving all emergency orders and actions issued by the village manager concerning or related to COVID-19 and providing for an effective date.
Move.
I moved. London.
Second.
Davey and London. Thank you.
Madam Manager, you want to take the reins?
yes, thank you, Mayor. I know it's a little bit atypical for us to do a presentation for a meeting like this, but there was so much information. I thought it would be helpful for us to have some slides that we could share to kind of recap what we've done and the actions that we've taken. So good evening to all of you. I'm so happy to see you, and I'm happy to see that you're well during these unprecedented times. The village's response to COVID-19 is strong. I am confident that the Village of Key Biscayne is prepared to lead this community through the COVID-19 state of emergency. We were the first municipality in South Florida to mandate a curfew. We proactively closed our community center, village parks, and beaches. We proactively implemented a non-resident travel restriction and restricted construction work. We'd like to thank, excuse me?
Sorry.
No problem. I would like to thank the community for their kindness and patience, their insightful challenges that they've presented to us, their cooperation, and voluntary compliance as village staff continues to work tirelessly to serve each of you. I would also like to recognize village staff, whom without everything we've accomplished, shy of 1 month would not be possible. It takes a village, and we are lucky to have a strong one. Information, as you know, is coming very quickly, and things are happening quickly, and decisions are being made quickly. And I assure you that none of these decisions have been taken lightly, and we carry the weight of them, and we will follow through for you. So few things I wanted to cover, just some gratitude to our community partners and some of the work with them, some of the effectiveness response tactics that we've taken, an update on our communications. We're going to have a report from our public safety officials, a little bit on our financial oversight and the continuity of operations that we have in place. So our mission objective is for the village of Key Biscayne is executing an abundance of caution to protect our community. We will continue to communicate village-wide efforts and take necessary action to keep the village of Key Biscayne safe and healthy. I'd like to give special gratitude to the Community Foundation. We have gathered volunteers. They have worked with our fire rescue to do health screenings. We are supporting the seniors. We've launched an Adopt a Senior program. As of last week, we have been working with Freebie to serve meals and provide delivery services. We've had residents donating supplies and goods that, of course, are being quality controlled by our before being put into operation. Masks have been purchased for essential workers and for our community. We've had sewing circles that have made hundreds of masks for seniors, flower donations, and resources related to family and individual activities for social distancing and isolating. Thank you, Community Foundation, for the work that you've done. We're also tracking the effectiveness of some of the efforts that we are taking to stop the spread of the virus. We are monitoring the curve on the number of positive cases on the island. As you've noticed with the communications we've been sending out, this is a very serious, life-threatening event, and our infection rate is increasing. We've been taking time to benchmark the data that we have against other communities, including other countries, to try to determine what effective mitigation strategies can be implemented for the village. This is a chart that shows the positive cases as reported by FDOH. We obviously know there is a bit of a lag time in the report, but as of today, this morning's report, we had 44 positive cases on the village. Some of the other metrics we're looking at are the number of vehicles that are traveling onto the island. Something that we've all discussed is the definition of essential for the village of Key Biscayne. And one indicator for us is the number of vehicles coming in the island. You can see a bit of a trend coming down, but we still have between 5,000 and 6,000 cars coming a day. So we really need to think critically about what we're doing as individuals and what we can do moving forward to be socially responsible to help stop this spread. With regard to the communication, we do have a public information program in place. We have been providing daily updates. We have launched a webpage as a central hub for our public health information. We've developed and distributed various response collateral, including infographics, fact sheets. We've deployed specific things for condo community and essential businesses. We've also launched official Instagram accounts for our public safety departments, both fire rescue and police, so that department-specific information can be made available to the public immediately. We've established our incident response inquiry management system to maintain an ongoing line of communication with residents, and we'll be posting frequently asked questions. So as we become made aware of issues or concerns in the community, we are taking that information and posting it to our website, so there is a single source of truth to help the community understand what actions the village is taking. And in order to accomplish this, we have leveraged the relationships that we have with the Chamber of Commerce, the foundation, and other media outlets and residents to help us disseminate our official village updates. We, from the get-go, defined a high-level strategy with regard to our response to COVID-19. We basically looked at the highest threats, the highest risks, and came up with strategies to mitigate each of those risks. And the result is some of the executive orders that we've issued, as well as some of the tactics that we've deployed. We'll be getting an update from both of our chiefs to get into some of the high-level strategies and planning tactics that we've deployed. We are operating under an incident command structure. So to clarify for the community, as the village manager, I am responsible for setting the strategy and the objectives for the incident response. However, to our council members' point, there are operations that need to continue, and we do have a continuity of operations plan in place. So as the incident progresses, the chiefs rotate between the incident command role, and they are supported by many of the members of the organization, many of whom are participating in response efforts that they haven't done before. And I commend them and I applaud them, and I commend and applaud the chiefs and their very, very professional and talented staffs for helping coach and train those individuals for participating in the response. Of course, I'd also like to acknowledge the University of Miami. Some recent updates we have as of today, there are some partnership opportunities to get a bit deeper into the testing and the research. So I'm looking forward to developing those ideas. At this time, I would like to ask Chief Press and Chief Lang, if you could please give a brief update to council on some of the activities that have been going on in your departments. And council members, once we finish our report, we can open it up for Q&A, and I can always jump back to any slide as it suits you. So Chief Press, would you kindly give your update, sir?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Madam Manager. Quick report. First thing and most important of all are healthy. Right now, we have nobody out from our staff. We have some tentative exposures. However, based on the medical director that we fall under from the City of Miami, Dr. Adams, he doesn't feel that those exposures were strong enough to even conduct the test unless our officers actually show some signs of the illness. So we're very grateful that everybody is healthy at this moment. I want to talk a little bit very quickly about the stress that our officers are under. And I'm going to kind of use myself as an example. I've, as you all know, been in this business way too long, and I have faced many crazy moments in my life and many one-on-one moments where it could have gone one way or another. However, had it gone in the wrong way, the damage would have been done to me, and my family wouldn't have been involved in that. And had it gone that way for a police officer, they would have had to deal with the situation out there, but their families would have been protected. The stress that we're all under right now is that this isn't the same as facing a man with a gun. A man with a gun, there's a bullet, there's a cop, there's a bad guy, and you do what you have to do. This is an unknown that we're all concerned about because we may bring it home to our families. So I could tell you that the stress levels that myself and every one of our staff are dealing with right now is not simply providing a service and God forbid we contract the virus, but we're more fearful. And this is the message from my cops because they've been amazing. We're more fearful about bringing it to our homes, but we realize that this is our job. We're taking every precaution. Thank God right now we have a manageable amount of PPEs and masks and gloves. We're going to need more in the future, but if you want to talk about stress, I think it's more about our fear of bringing it home to our families than it is if we catch it ourselves. To talk about the enforcement efforts that we've been doing, number one, and first and foremost, we have blockaded the village in the mornings from any cyclist coming into the village. In 4 days, we have turned back in excess of 1,500 cyclists in 4 days from entering our village. I think that's a significant number because of the fact that they come through, they go to our businesses, they have been very irresponsible to the 6-foot distancing and to the groups. So I think that that is something that's very positive for our village as we try to protect even the small businesses that are having to work with them and provide them the things that they wanted to have when they came into the village. For those of you who are not aware, and I'm sure many people have heard many stories, there have been some arrests in the last 2 days, one of which was very high profile. Thank you to the council for allowing us to get an LPR, a license plate reader. at the entranceway to the village. It worked like gold the other day. On Sunday, it alerted us to a stolen car. Our officer and our supervisor, Sergeant Andrew, was able to locate the car at the Shell gas station. We were able to take down the subjects at gunpoint. We recovered a weapon. We recovered a stolen car. And thanks to our partners over in Miami-Dade who provided air support through their aviation and provided canine support, the canine was able to find a third subject hiding in the woods near Calusa, and we were able to make arrests and all of that. And in addition to that, the following day, which was yesterday, we had a bicycle stolen from the Winn-Dixie. Within moments, a description of the cycle was put out. Within moments after that, our officers going up and down the causeway found the subject, took the subject down without incident, without a major exposure. Were able to recover the bicycle for the victim, and the subject is now in jail. So the cops have been very, very proactive and on top of everything when it comes to watching out, not only for themselves and our citizens, but to make sure that bad guys don't get to do the things that they're trying to do. Our beach and our park numbers, in the very beginning, when we shut down the beaches, when we shut down the parks, we were experiencing a tremendous amount of people that we had to actually push off and tell them that the parks and the beaches were closed. In the last 3 days, I'm happy to report that it's gone down to single digits, and we're at 2 or 3 in the beach, a few in the park. So thank you to our citizens, because they are actually listening to these emergency orders that we're trying to do. They're listening to the police officers, and we're out there on the beach every day. We're in the parks every day taking care of business. I do want to thank, first and foremost, our partners with Miami-Dade Police Department, who have helped us with our enforcement efforts, and they have made it very clear that whatever our needs are, if we go down, they're the next man up. And I think that's really important to recognize the fact that they are truly our partners in this, and they're working hard to work with us. And then there's the community, and I'll end with this. The community has been so supportive of us. There have been people like Mark Randazzo and his fantastic family that have provided meals for our people. We've got people like Brigitte who have sent little treats over to the police department just to say thank you. And we even had a private family today distribute some cards for CVS for our officers for the efforts that they do. So when we get that kind of recognition and that thanks from the community, we're not asking for it, but I want to make it very clear publicly that we're grateful, thankful. And the last thing I'd like to say is thank you to our administration, our bosses, our council. You're allowing us to do our job. You're supporting us to do our job. Our police officers see it, they feel it, and they appreciate it. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Lang, if you kindly give us a report on fire rescue.
Well, good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long month, to say the least. Overall, I know that we're all in this together. Each of you are doing your part, both as leads of your household and leaders in this community, and that's what it's going to take. I want to recognize, similar to the manager and police chief, a lot of people talk about the responders, and we wear the badges, and we signed up for this. We signed up for when bad things happen that we're going to show up, and every department has played a role in responding to this emergency. It's hard to believe. Wow. Some people, are out of work. We have been putting in countless hours, 12, 16-hour days at times. And the way I like to see our role is we're problem solvers. I don't think anybody is an expert at a pandemic. Nobody was alive back in 1918, as I recall. And I'm not an epidemiologist or a medical doctor, but we basically are problem solvers, and we have a systematic approach to doing this. There's something I've said for a little while. It's called safety drives the mission. So basically everything we do from an operational perspective in responding to this is run through safety, because at the end of the day, this is about the virus that's invisible. And it's as if, in my opinion, that we're fighting a war that we will win, and we will get to the other side. Emergency management, you heard about the incident command structure. This incident management team, that's what we're all part of. Chief Press and I play the role alternating as incident commanders. And there's people in operations, people that run logistics, people that look out further. They're called the planning section. Benjamin and Juan lead up our finance section. You've heard a little bit about public information. We have a role that deals with outside agencies, and then safety. And these are all incredibly important components to making us successful. The unique thing is that if we were to disappear, the structure's in place for any team from across the country to potentially come in here and manage this emergency the way that we've provided that structure. So our emergency management network is strong. We have a daily call with the county emergency manager and the emergency managers of the other major municipalities. On that call is also the fire chiefs, and we talk to them about real problems that we're seeing. One of the discussions today was it's actually happening. The Miami Beach Convention Center is going to be turned into a field hospital, and Miami Beach Fire Rescue working through some of those logistical challenges. I talk to the Miami Fire Chief on a regular basis. They're an incredible partner of ours, along with the other fire rescue agencies as well. And I'm gonna come back and touch on how important that relationship is in just a minute. There is a concept that I want you to remember. It's this idea of rolling forward. Some of the ideas that we come up with and things that we implement, we're gonna be like, wow, that's amazing. We did a really good job. And there's other ideas and moments that happen that we're gonna say, what were we thinking? And it's critical that we roll forward, because we have to deal with right now, and we have to look forward. And if we get too hung up on what happened yesterday or last week, not that we can all remember, but that's those are some of we got to continue to roll forward. That's very important. Just a little bit of what's happened in the fire department. In early March, we secured our fire station. We kind of made it almost like a palace. We canceled time off. We stopped taking passengers on the rescue truck, and only were taking patients that we transport to the hospital. Melissa, the Community Foundation, and her team is incredible, as you've already heard. And we all know that. She started collecting some data for us, which was extremely helpful. The structure helps us, I think, in emergency management and as responders. I think everybody has asked me this question at one point or another, but how are our people doing? Councilmember Laredo, you specifically asked that. Overall, when I talk to our personnel, they're doing well. I'm concerned on a day-to-day about their mental health. I want to make sure that we're watching each other's backs, if you will, and we have our fingers on the pulse of each person. And there's a structure. The captains and lieutenants are taking care of that. I am face to face with our personnel often. They are concerned, as Chief Press noted, that they're walking into people's homes, and then they're walking into their homes. And that's not an easy thing for them or the family. Last night at about 6:45, I was notified about a firefighter that was on shift the day before. He got off at 7:30 yesterday morning, and he had a fever. And so he was symptomatic, is essentially what he was. So we immediately mobilized, if you will, our leadership, reached out to our medical director, came up with a plan that he had already done himself. He isolated himself, he protected his family. We immediately placed 10 firefighters on self-quarantine, or self-isolation is the correct word. And we initiated a protocol to test those individuals. So one firefighter was tested today, and we'll be testing 10 additional firefighters tomorrow. What does that mean? That means I lost a third of the department to temporary isolation. And so this is expected. We planned for this. We're ready. So we went to something called Alpha Bravo, where we alternate shifts, and we have enough personnel. We do that in a responsible fashion. We look to determine what's the best way to do it from an operational perspective, from a safety perspective, from a cost perspective. And right now we're basically working 24 hours on and 24 hours off. As soon as we get results, which I expect tomorrow from this one individual, this firefighter, we'll be able to make some decisions. If he's negative, everybody's released except for that individual, and he'll be off duty for 7 days. It's important that this happened now, because it's going to happen again, and we need to expect it to happen to other employees, other work groups, other departments, and we're prepared. I talked to the firefighter today via text. I talked to him yesterday. He's in pretty good spirits, and he's feeling a little better today, but we are going to be very cautious about how we're dealing with this. Moving on to testing, that's been a very hot topic. We created this mobile testing unit. The mobile testing unit tested 20 people. The 20 people we tested, 10 of them so far are negative. We have a call center that's established. We have a firefighter, paramedic that's staffed there all the time, along with our partners from the recreation department. Calls, they've received 86 total calls inside of 7 days. There's been 57 test requests, and about 140 additional people via the Community Foundation are still interested, but not all of them qualify. We're following the CDC guidelines as you outlined the other day, and it's been an interesting topic. At this point, the mobile testing is temporarily stopped because I don't have personnel to be able to staff our core mission of being able to respond to fire rescue responses and be able to provide the mobile testing. So as soon as we're up and healthy, we'll be able to reevaluate and implement that appropriately. We had some interesting conversations today about how that testing can impact our patient care. So I think it will be, even if we are not operating it, the skill set and the ability to have tests here is going to be powerful for our patients that we treat. The mass testing, if you will. One question I have for you, if you're going to discuss it, is what's the strategy that's in place? I think it's incredibly important. I've spoken with a number of people. Councilmember London helped us find Interim Health. Chief Press talked to MedRight today, which is servicing Miami Beach. I've talked to a number of local doctors, and I heard Dr. Curry may be addressing the council. Spent quite a bit of time talking with Dr. Curry. I personally, there are testings available in Miami-Dade County. If we were to test it, I do think that it's something that should be outsourced. We don't have the infrastructure, the personnel to support mass testing. And the other question I have is, how many people can we test and how quickly? Because I think that matters when it comes to your strategy. I'll wrap up here with just a couple of things. An outlook. I think it's, when you go into a mission, if you will, you have to figure out how you're going to get out. That's one of the first questions you ask. And the interesting thing about emergency management and fire prevention is you want to be wrong, right? I hope I'm wrong on my outlook. But the way I've been able to portray this to some people is we know what it's like to prepare for a hurricane, right? We watch the models. We say, oh my goodness, it's coming. We see the lines. We get in the 5-day cone. Nobody tells anybody, but they went to the grocery store to stock up. Next thing you know, they're in the 3-day cone. Work gets canceled. School gets canceled. We hunker down. We ride through the storm, and we hope it doesn't hit us. Well, the difference is this is a hurricane. It's going to hit us. The difference is it's like 10 or 20 hurricanes all strung together. And I'm confident that we're going to come out on the other side of this thing. We've talked with researchers through emergency management, in a planning section and the models that we've looked at. And I think this is some interesting data, but the greater our compliance is to stay at home, the quicker we're gonna get out of this. I don't know how I can stress that more. And just because we don't see people on the streets, we got to make sure that we're not going to each other's house if you're with those 6 people, you need to be with those 6 people and only those 6 people. That said, the peak of this thing is projected at a 50% to 40 to 50% compliance of sometime in the first few weeks of May, which means that that's the peak. That's the halfway point. And that's the projections that I'm basing some of our decision making on, which means that we're possibly not going to be to the other side of this thing, the other tail, until the end of June, which is a long time from now. I hope I'm wrong. It's okay if I'm wrong, but that's what we're planning for. We're planning for enough personal protective equipment. We're looking at our staff from a long-term basis. We want to make sure that they stay healthy. And we're going to be cycling through a number of our people that are symptomatic, just like the rest of the general population. That's what we're planning for. I strongly recommend that we continue to do what we've done, which is focus on the essential services of safety, of fire rescue and police. I know my men and women in the fire department are prepared and ready. And they're cautious in what they're doing. I have to hand it to, I got a lot of questions yesterday or a few days ago when the police made that arrest and the helicopter were flying around, and they were asking and they were concerned. And I said, what we need to do is make sure that we're spreading the word that they're keeping us safe in the village. And I think they did an incredible job. But everybody plays a part in this. My hat's off to the administration and to everybody on council and really everybody else that doesn't typically respond to the emergency. They've stepped up, and anybody that watches this that's not in this meeting, please do your part and stay home. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Lang. Thank you, Chief Lang. So two more slides to just kind of go over a little bit of some of the fiscal oversight that we've been looking at. So in the report provided today, we do provide both the dollar amount spent for overtime as well as for emergency purchases. The process by which overtime is allocated, the department directors need to assess the needs of their organization and manage and authorize the overtime on a daily basis. We've been working very closely with the departments to try to reel in the overtime by looking at how we manage the shifts, how we make assignments within the incident command structure and beyond. That will help us minimize the OT without jeopardizing our response to the event, because we're not willing to jeopardize the safety or the health or the well-being of our residents. With regard to emergency purchases, our code is pretty clear with regard to how emergency purchases are made. We do process the request through the incident command structure. Logistics works on sourcing. We try to look at as many different sources as we can and get the best price and quality. With this response in particular, our safety officers, and I commend them as well for all the work that they have done, make sure that we stay clear of any fraudulent equipment or PP&E. So we've been moving quickly through those purchases. We are also aware of our expenditures and what opportunities there may be for reimbursement in the future. So we are looking at the FEMA programs. There are public assistance programs with regard to the cost incurred for the Emergency Operations Center, specific trainings, disinfection of certain public facilities, emergency medical care, temporary facilities, purchase and distribution of food and medicine and other consumables, security and law enforcement. So there are many opportunities there with FEMA. We are doing everything that we need to do to document all of our activities so that we are well positioned to get reimbursed. We also, the CDC provides a cooperative agreement for emergency response that also provides some reimbursement opportunities for us. And I will reiterate, although we are watching the cost, we are a safety, this is safety driven, and we are going to do both. We are going to manage our costs. We're going to buy efficiently and effectively. We're going to bundle purchases, and we're also going to make sure that the men and women supporting the community are properly equipped to handle the response. With regard to continuity of operations, so we've spent some time working toward not only the incident, but there are things in the organization that need to continue. So high level, just some of the things that you can expect to continue on an operational basis with regard to administration. We will be presenting a budget, we'll be having the budget workshop. We do want to have this strategic retreat. It was canceled when this first started. We are prepared to host it virtually. So I'd like at some point to try to find a date that we can secure everybody's availability to do that strategic retreat prior to the budget hearings. Obviously, we're moving on our after actions from previous council directives. On the finance side, we're moving forward with our audit. Benjamin has done a tremendous job catching back up. We were a little bit behind in schedule. There has been some allowance given to us time-wise, not just to everybody to complete their annual report. We are on schedule to be able to do that. We're also going to be on the Parks Rec and open spaces. We're continuing to negotiate the 530 Crittenden property. We're working on the community center design for bidding for construction and for the design part. We're taking some advantage of the downtime, and we're going to resod the fields. We're going to resurface the pool deck, of course, adhering to our own guidance with regard to proper social distancing and PPE. We've also found that there are some opportunities that were presented to us that we weren't expecting with this tragedy, with this crisis. There are some playground equipment replacement work that we're going to do. There's some software training, the parks and the rec software. There's some functionality that had not been fully activated, so we're going to be working on that. We're also going to be doing some other maintenance work inside the community center, as well as some organization of records and documentation. Within Public Works, we are going to be rolling out a 5-year right-of-way maintenance program that takes into account some of the feedback we've been getting over the past few months. You're not going to see crews or big shovels out in the field, but we are going to be moving forward with bidding and advertising and design for our stormwater maintenance project, for our continuing services for engineering services, the beach and dune nourishment. We're working through the permitting and design for that next nourishment project. We are still working on the Fernwood parking improvements and other implementations like CityWorks and the customer response management tool. So we are moving forward with our continuity of operations and all essential. Most energy is dedicated toward the incident. I think we're going to see a shift in the response efforts, and there's going to be a lot of enforcement on the police side, and there's going to be a lot of response on the EMS side. And so we need to support those operations, but there are certain essential functions that we are working on and will continue in tandem with the response to the incident. So that is what we have. I can answer any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to present some of the activities we've been pursuing.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Councilmember Laredo, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First of all, to Chief Preston Lang's report, it makes me quite happy to hear that we don't have but one case of physical health issue. That is something that's been concerning to everybody, and I'm sure all of our councilmen. And as to Chief Lang's response on the stress, and I think Jeff Press as well alluded to it, and my concern also, as everybody in the nation is about the mental health impact. So I would only want to add to this financial restructuring that we're doing, that we put aside or find money. If you both directors that are professionals in some mental health either visually or otherwise. That is, either psychiatrists or psychologists at the time that you think your men need it, men and women need it. That's something that I think is almost as important as the actual virus. So the other thing that makes me very happy, and I think I speak for all of us, is that Chief Perez mentioned that the men on the field feel and sense and recognize our backup. So that is about as much as I can contribute to make sure the professionals know that we have their back, and particularly, as I said often to them, have their back when they make mistakes, because they will make mistakes. And God forbid, in these times, all of us are constantly making mistakes. So I hope that spirit of support that you get from the council continues to be present. An issue that has to do with policing, which I would love to have a specific communication with that manager. There's not any issue in the Key Biscayne that I know that is so unified as let me see how I can say this diplomatically, this taste for our bicycle invaders. And they've shown their callousness even at the worst of times. So this bicycle enforcement policy makes me very happy, and I think it would be very worthwhile for our residents and taxpayers to know that the police department has specifically done this. I would like to be able to, in your communication strategy, put that out right away, including through the Islander and all the mediums, because that is an issue that bothers a lot of people during this crisis, but it's a continuing annoyance to our community. And they showed the lowest level of that bad reputation. I couldn't think that it could get any lower, but it did during this crisis. And lastly, Madam Manager, as it relates to reimbursements, please use our Washington lobbyists, because the United States Congress passed the largest rescue package in the history of the United States. And nobody knows what's in there. It is so long and it was done so big, but it was a lot of money put in for direct assistance to municipalities. So besides the sources that you're talking about, CDC and other, please have them scrub, as they call it in Washington, that bill to see that we're lined up and first in line to get reimbursements, because it's going to get funded pretty soon. The money is going to start going out pretty soon. And that's all. I just want to thank all of you, the manager, the police chief, the chief of fire and rescue. You guys are doing an extraordinary job, and it's unanimous. It's my kind of feedback from the people that contact me, how proud they are of the work you're doing, and so am I.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, and then Councilmember London.
Thank you. This question's for Chief Lang. You mentioned something that I'd like to see if we can have a little bit more detail to. You said that the testing was going to help tremendously with patient care. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how those two are connected?
Yes. So there's been a lot of collaboration. I've talked with our leadership, our lieutenants, our captains. I talk with them daily. Today we were with our medical director addressing the firefighters, and to be really honest, they were concerned about what was going on with their peer and their other firefighters. And so a question came up to say, who can we provide any type of testing if someone's not tested at a hospital? So what we believe, if we're transporting someone with flu-like symptoms that's having difficulty breathing, they get transported to a hospital, they're discharged. We've been hearing, not as much here, but in other areas of the country, that patients are being discharged with low oxygen saturation. And if they weren't tested at a hospital, that we can follow up through our quality assurance and see how they're doing, and find out if they were tested directly from them. And if they weren't treated at the hospital, we can follow up with them and try to provide that service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember London.
Yes, Manager Andrea, you mentioned that we're doing well with our finance and our audit. This is entering the 7th month since the end of the fiscal year. Is there any reason why the audit's not been completed, since we now have a chief financial officer and a controller?
Yeah, so there were some delays in the initial document gathering from one of our third parties through the pension. We can get an update if that documentation has been provided from the administrator from the pension, but hopefully that documentation has been provided and we will be able to comply with the GFOA deadline.
So you're telling me that everything is done as far as the village is concerned. The only thing we're waiting for is the pension. Is that correct?
Everything's not done, but we're on track to be done on time, yes.
Well, on time is what? How many months after the end of the fiscal year and the numbers still become meaningful? We had this previously before we had no finance department, no CFO, no anything. And everybody said, we're doing a great job. We got our report 10 months after it was all done. So it became history, not something we could look at and become meaningful. What can you do to make it more current?
So despite the CAFR not being out, we are providing the quarterly budget to actual reports, which we've been doing. So there is every 3 months, you are getting an update on our exact position within our financial position. So I think we are providing that information. If there's anything else that you'd like from us, we can provide any reporting that you would like to see.
My other question is for Chief Lang. Eric, now that you said because of manpower and everything else, we're not doing mobile testing, but we have all these requests with the Community Foundation for testing. Is it possible or practical for those who want to be tested to come to the fire station and get tested since we're not going out to test mobile-wise?
So we have this mobile testing unit that's in place. It's by appointment only, and they go out to someone's home. I mentioned when I was giving my report that we basically tried to set up the fire department as if it was a fortress. I personally got about 7 phone calls. Got one just before. Tell them I said hi. I got a phone call just before this meeting started about testing, and I don't want people showing up here randomly for testing. That's not the way. I don't think that's safe for citizens. I don't think that's safe for our firefighter paramedics. So as soon as I'm able to, and that we have staffing, we can, we're going to assess the situation and potentially open up mobile testing. I do know that there's some private vendors that are starting to offer testing, and we're continuing to look at other options for testing by the day. One thing I didn't mention that, and I think you know this, that the blood type of tests that take 5 to 45 minutes, we're researching that, and we've tested 4 different products already, and they're only having about a 60% accuracy. So as this environment changes, I also think this need for testing is going to change. But at the moment, I don't recommend, I'm not supporting personnel showing up to the fire station to be tested.
What I understand you're saying is with the mobile testing unit, which you have, which is great, for the time being was suspended and you weren't doing mobile testing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I also understand you say you want to keep the firehouse in a sterile condition, so you don't want anybody coming in there, correct?
Yes.
So therefore, what would stop them from people walking up there, swabbing their nose outside the fire station, and people leave, go home, and basically put it in your test tube or whatever collection vial you use and send it? Anything?
Yes.
What?
We will only do it by appointment.
By appointment. I'm talking about by appointment. I'm talking about the people who know.
It's not something that
testing unit.
Right. So it's a mobile testing unit. It's by appointment only. It's in your house. That's the way we're set up. We've thought about some different ideas for deploying it, but I think I know it's not the right thing to do is to attract people to the fire station to be tested. I assure you that we're looking at deployment models to be able to do this, where, but we've had about 2.5 days of this. We've tested 20 people. And as first thing I got to do, Ed, is get my guys back, the men and women back on shift to have fully staffed. And at that point, assuming everybody, stays healthy, then we'll remobilize this and we'll work and we'll continue to try to roll this out in a systematic way.
I'm talking about systematic. I'm talking about having people by appointment come outside there, assuming your guys are there, not on call. I don't understand why you can't do it. I hear all your words of programs and mobility and all these other things, but something simple like that, which would take care of the, I think you said 57 requests that the Community Foundation has. Why you can't do that, I don't understand.
So I understand.
Councilmember McCormick?
So I want to thank the manager and both chiefs for that presentation. I think it was really informative, and I hope that it was reassuring to our community that we are really doing it as much as we can and looking for what more we can do to help try to keep our community safe. Specifically, I loved hearing about the FEMA documentation of everything so that we could try to seek reimbursement. I remember how important that was with Hurricane Irma, so I'm really happy to hear we're doing that. And it sounds like we're looking for lots of other opportunities wherever they may be. I was thinking after Councilmember Petros asked us at the last meeting about other things that maybe we could be doing during this time, in addition to the wonderful ideas that the administration's already presented with the fields and so forth. And I want to make sure that we're not missing any other financial opportunities. And I'm wondering if it's possible for the manager, maybe for the next meeting, maybe Benjamin could look into some of the other opportunities that may be out for us. And specifically, maybe we could carve out a little time at our next meeting for sort of a mini strategic planning specific to financial opportunities and future finances. Before this COVID-19 situation, we were looking into doing a possible bond issuance, and there's since been some market disruptions, and I think we've all seen municipal interest rates are extraordinarily low. I think it was less than 1% the last time I checked. And to echo Councilmember Laredo a few minutes ago, there's been a lot of talk out of Washington about support for local governments, even for things like infrastructure, which we all know we have real concerns about. And there may be some real opportunities for us, and I want to make sure that we don't miss them. So if it's possible, maybe for our next meeting, if Benjamin could look into some of those opportunities, see what if anything, there is for us, I would appreciate that. Is that possible?
Yeah, we can give an update at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Segurola.
Yeah, well, first, I'm very happy to hear, I think I'm pleasantly surprised to hear the reports from the manager and both chiefs. I think we're on the right track, given the options of what are available to us in municipalities like us. I guess there are just one observation that came to mind and one question. The observation is that Chief Lang said that it looks like the midpoint is being projected as early May. And my gut feeling is that sounds about right. So we're going to head into the summer with this situation, continue with virtual meetings, and continue with people social distancing until then. I think that message needs to get across to all the residents. The question I had is also, given what Chief Lang said, I think I brought it up at the last meeting, if potentially for the next meeting or sooner, I think our effort should be into finding some sort of vendor that could come on to Key Biscayne and take over the testing from the fire department. They have been doing a great job up till now, and they've been filling a need where no one else could. But I think, especially with the setbacks that we've had with the firefighters that have been tested recently and had to be pulled from active duty, I think we really should put our efforts into finding a vendor, someone that could come onto Key Biscayne, take over the whole testing criteria, following CDC guidelines as they are now. And as more tests become available in the future, of course, we can expand that testing program to more residents. My final concern is our next meeting is scheduled for April 28th. That's 3 weeks from now. I'm not for having council meetings on a continuous basis, but because this situation is evolving so quickly, I would ask the other members of the council and the manager that we may need to change the schedule of the council meetings to make it, I don't know, every 2 weeks or the sort, at least for the time being. I think through video, it makes it a little easier than having to everyone go to the chambers, but that's just food for thought. We do need to make these policy decisions as the situation on the ground changes continuously. That's it.
Councilmember Petros, did you want to say anything?
Yes, please. Good evening, everybody. I want to follow up a little bit on what Ignacio was suggesting and the manager about a strategic date, a date for the strategic retreat. I think that might be a really nice thing, that if we could find time to get together and start planning, it might be better. It might be a sort of refreshing getaway from all of this stuff. So I like the idea of trying to set up a date for that. I'd like to ask the manager also, in addition to the report on what's happening with our first responders, I wanted to kind of understand about all the other village employees that may or may not, that are all impacted, but I don't know what's happening with them. And I just like to know what we're doing, and if people have been asked to not work, are they going to be able to work when we can get back to full operations? So that would be one question that I had. Two other things, the website wasn't one of the things that was mentioned, but I think that is a high priority that we get this website updated so that it can function in a way that is easier for residents to see what's going on a quicker basis. We've done a great job with the platform, or they have done a great job with the platform we have, but I think all of us can see that it's an outdated way of informing people. And it would be great to get that up and running, a new site. And then as far as testing, I completely agree with Chief Lang that we as a group need to decide on what our specific goals are for testing, hopefully tonight, so that we can implement a strategy of how to get that done and not just say we want to have a blanket testing where we're looking to test as many people as possible, as fast as possible, because it's, in the research I've been doing, a very complicated issue that needs some real vetting. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to respond, Mayor?
Yeah, why don't you respond to that?
Okay, so with regard to the date for the strategic retreat, I will work with the clerk's office to circulate some dates, and we'll try to get that scheduled. On the website, that is definitely one of the projects that, with regard to needing to set up our communications infrastructure, I need to circle back with staff and get an update on the timeline for that. So I will circle back with you and provide that update to the entire council. And then with regard to folks that are working at home, so we did deploy as many folks as we could to stay home, especially those folks that fell under the 65 and older safer at home. We needed to have some of our employees who are within that frame stay home, and we've set them up to be able to work remotely. We set up what we're calling a work status and availability tracker through Human Resources. So we've identified each employee, what their current work status is, whether working remotely or from the office, and what they are working on, whether it's their regular duties or if they've been reassigned with other duties. And then we've identified if somebody has any capacity that's available, we've identified what skill sets those individuals have so that they can be reassigned. So we're still in crisis mode, but we are expecting that this is going to continue for some time. So our goal is to fully utilize everybody to the most capacity that we can. And if you want, if you have specific questions, I can answer, but in spirit, it is something that's important to me that we keep our workforce engaged and working.
I guess the other quick question I would have, are there areas, for example, our community center's closed, and there should actually be some savings to the fact that we don't have certain things operating, and that would help offset some of the areas where we have to increase our expenditures, and have you analyzed that?
So community center is a great example. Although we are going to have some cost savings. So for example, our part-timers are not getting paid. If they're not working, they're not getting paid. However, we also have a reduction in revenue, because remember that most of our services from the community center, you pay for those programs, and it's in a revenue share with the village. So there is going to be an offset. We're working on the finance department. Through the finance department, we'll be having some cost and revenue projections. So we'll report back. The next quarterly report is coming due. And so we'll share both on the revenue and the expense side how we think this is going to impact us in the near term and longer term future.
Thank you.
I just had one quick comment to Councilmember Laredo's point about us pushing Washington. I got an email this afternoon from Representative Shalala's office. They are proposing, I know there's a $150 billion the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, or CARES, but that only involves communities with 500,000 populations of 500,000 or more. So we would just miss that line. But there is now going to be the Coronavirus Community Relief Act, which they're pushing for smaller communities, as I understand it. So they are trying to do that. So I think we could probably try and direct our lobbyists up there to do what they can to get that moved through. We're gonna need some assistance. I think a lot of our related municipalities are going to need some help after this is over. And again, the more I'm reading, I know Hong Kong's about to go through another wave. Schools are talking that they may not be back for quite a while. So I think we want to understand that this isn't a short time event. I think we have to realize we have to plan for the long haul on this. So I just want to throw that out there. Before we move forward, we've got to open up public comments before we take any votes on the resolution that's still there. Is there anything else anybody else wanted to bring up? Councilmember McCormick. I apologize.
I just wanted to sort of tie together Ed, Chief Lang, Councilmember Laredo, Councilmember Petros, if it's even possible. But it strikes me that what we really need in terms of this testing is an actual, as I think Chief Lang said, some sort of strategy that we're trying to achieve some sort of goal and what it is that we want to do and how we want to implement it. And it doesn't strike me as the kind of thing that we can do, I was going to say up here, but we're all over the place, but something that we could do as a body, but rather I think maybe it's another one of those things to ask the manager and her staff to come back as soon as they can with what they think the best plan for implementation and best strategy to get results out of it. Specifically because we know this is really important to our residents. I'm sure we're going to hear from lots of people in public comments. We've all seen how many people signed the petition asking for testing. It's clearly something that people want more about and want us to do. And I think we have to, listen to what people are asking for and try to then decide what's the best way to do it and then implement it. So what I would suggest is that we ask for, as soon as we possibly can, a plan for how we can actually address this.
Thank you.
That's it.
Does anybody else have a comment before we go to public comments? Okay. Get to public comments, please.
So it looks like I have 3 people signed up for public comments.
Okay, I'm sorry. Pete, what's the, is it *9?
That's what I was about to say. Press *9 on your telephones if you wish to speak, and I will put you in queue. And to start it off, may I please get the caller from phone number ending in 9082 to speak. Hello?
I think that's Dr. Curry.
Yeah, this is Roger Curry. Dr. Curry, I'm in 478 Bay Lane. I'm a physician here. My wife, Susanna, is also a physician here. And we have the medical building on Crandon Boulevard. I've had the great privilege of talking to the mayor and to Chief Lang about the possibility of testing and whether or not it's feasible, whether or not it's effective, and whether or not we need it and how can we do it. And I just wanted to tell council members and the chiefs and the manager that my wife and I are open to help, volunteer in any way we could as physicians to this effort. If it needs to be done, we're all willing and open and able to do it. The question of testing, however, really you have to think about it, is it's really secondary to the stay at home. And people could get the full sense that they're okay, they get a negative test, and they could turn out to be positive the next day, although they've been inoculated already. So the testing is not a complete safety. You're okay. You could still have the virus be exposed, but not turn positive yet. On the other hand, again, if they're positive, what to do. So the issue is you test people is what you're going to do with that test and how it's going to affect. And it's got a lot of ramification. And just people need to think about all these things. It shouldn't be tested for curiosity's sake. Everybody would like to be tested for curiosity's sake, but it is not. We should follow strictly the guideline of the CDC, who should be tested. And I don't know if it's our job to do it or public officials to do it. That's all I have to say. But we're open, available, and congratulate all of you there for your effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next caller.
All right. Next caller is, if I could get the caller with the phone number of 4449 as the ending, please speak up.
Hello, my name is Professor Solomons. I'm at 126 Floranda in Botanica.
Hey, I'm sorry. Say your name, please.
I'm sorry, Solomons, Professor Stuart Solomons.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm somewhat astonished by the confidence that people are showing, and that this is going to be all over by May. I'd love to know where they get these figures from. I would suggest they look at Crimson Contagion, which was an exercise carried out by the HSS and FEMA, United States government. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I got cut off. Sorry. Yeah, Crimson Contagion. It was from January 2019 to August 2019, which was an exact simulation of what we're living through today. Is anybody familiar with this particular exercise?
Sir, this is public comments. It's not I'm sorry, we're not going to be having a back and forth.
No, we're not having a back and forth. So what I'm explaining is, in that projection, in that simulation, the FEMA and HHS predicted 110 million people would be infected, 7 million people would be in hospital, and 565,000 people would die. At the moment, in the United States, we've got 12,000 people dead and 387,000 people ill. So there is no possibility we're going to attain those figures, or half of those figures, indeed, by May. So I think there's some kind of intellectual myopia there. This is not even remotely possible. Now, if you go look at the World Health Authority, their prediction for the death rate is 3.4%. In Italy, their prediction on the people who've been tested and found positive is over 10%. I don't think people have an appropriate understanding of what's about to take place, and it's certainly going to take a lot longer than May. On the testing point, I had the opportunity of speaking to some very significant people in the United Kingdom. They have not yet found, and I think this is echoed by the fire chief, they've not yet found an effective or efficient testing modality. At least 50 to 60% of the tests come out wrong. And as Dr. Corey quite accurately pointed out, the tests are only effective for the day you take the test. You can be found to be negative, and the next day you can catch the virus. So I don't know what the process is for this testing that's going to be carried out, but you need to carry it out every day. There's actually a simpler process. And this is to do with this rather alarming figure of 6,000 cars that come to the island every day. In the airports, in places like Singapore and in fact a number of other places, they're using remote infrared contactless thermometers. And although this isn't completely effective, because 81% of people have mild to moderate symptoms, it will certainly identify anybody who's got a temperature. So, for example, if you post a police officer at Winn-Dixie with one of these contactless thermometers, they can immediately identify anybody who may well be a potential case, because clearly anything over 98.4 will indicate that they are more likely to be a case. Now, these remote contactless thermometers are not expensive. And it's even possible.
Professor, I'm sorry, we have a 3-minute limit on our,
It might be a recommendation. I think people are tested when they come onto the island with remote contactless thermometers. You don't have to.
Sir, I need you to, I'm gonna unmute you, but what I'd like you to do is reach out to Chief Lang, because he would be interested in speaking with you further. Professor Solomons? Did you hear me?
Thank you very much indeed.
Please.
Thank you.
Please reach out to the Chief Lang. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Folks, it is a 3-minute limit, so let's keep that in mind. Thank you. Next caller.
All right, the next caller is going to be a phone number ending in 9585. Caller, if you could please speak now.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, absolutely. So, Hugh Nicola, 121 Crandon Boulevard. First and foremost, I want to thank you for these. I think these weekly updates are fantastic for those of us who get involved, and I think the City Council has done an awesome job. There's a lot of information out there. It's confusing, right? Health first, I totally agree. You can just see from these calls that, there's a major disparity in opinions. On my end, and I'll make it brief because I understand the 3-minute limit. I think testing is really important. I think you guys should push as hard as you can to get it done. I'm sort of a little bit on the other side of the last caller, and that I'm concerned that I'm just simply concerned about the economic impact. And I understand health comes first, but I just want to make sure that the City Council is focused on the exit strategy, whatever it may be, right? So we'll keep an eye on the news, we keep an eye on everything. To the extent we can test, whatever it may be, the virus itself, antibodies as well, I think is really important. So I just hope that, that I'm sure you are. I just hope the City Council is focused on testing, because at the end of the day, we got to open up businesses here eventually. Whenever that may be, the sooner the better. However, the only way we can know when we can do it safely is by knowing how extreme the situation is. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next caller.
The next caller will be phone number ending in 7906. Caller, please speak now.
State your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Michelle Esteves, 798 Crandon Boulevard. Council members and manager, fire chief, police chief, I thank you for all you are doing and all the services that you provide in these pandemic times. Council, let those hired to do their job. They have certain powers. They're doing a wonderful job. Madam Manager, Chief, thank you. You are extremely dedicated to this pandemic. As a condominium manager in many units on the island, we are doing our best. We are implementing a lot of regulations. Thank you to the mayor and council for also passing those regulations. And it is very important that we are all together. Madam Manager, don't be afraid. You have certain powers this time. Use them. Use them from your village residents for our safety and our health. Save our lives. Chief Lang, good luck. Sorry to hear that you have some of your members with some symptoms. They are our first responders, so we need to take care of them. I flew international for 3 days. Took me 28 hours between 4 airports and 3 planes. I isolated myself. I registered with the Community Foundation. They call me, they follow up with me, how I felt, how I was feeling, and if I want to do the test. I declined 2 times because I have no symptoms. So please don't misuse the test. Like somebody very proud in some neighbor shop said, oh, I called the Community Foundation hotline and because I have a weakened immune system, and they came and do the test. Please, if you don't have symptoms, don't waste the test. They are very important right now for those in need. Doesn't matter if we're rich or poor, pretty, ugly, white, black, but this virus is infecting us all. I think that with all respect in the village, we started a little late, but this, like Chief Lang mentioned, we are all being prepared for hurricanes, but we were not prepared for this. So we are doing our best, staying home, wear masks. Community Foundation is doing a wonderful job and they're making masks. Anybody that has some ideas, I producing masks for my employees for parchment paper that has been tested in Italy. I'm making from a roll 38 masks a day with some rubber bands and all that. So we are all in the same boat. So please also support our business community. Our business community is suffering tremendously. Support them. I think that we are reaching a point that we have. I'm going to wrap up. We are flattening the curve. So I really thank everybody and Councilman London. It's time that we look for our assisted living facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
All right, the next caller will be with phone number ending in 9657. Caller, please speak now.
Okay.
Please
That's
state
mine.
your name and address, please.
My name is Betty Stem Conroy, Conroy. I live at 785 Crandon Boulevard, Unit 1403. I know, first of all, thank you so much to everyone that's working so hard and really doing a fabulous, fabulous job. Such a stressful time. But there's one area that I think no one seems to be paying any attention to. It's the area of domestic abuse and domestic violence. I checked the statistics for Dade County and the calls are up 25%. And you have to realize that many, many women or men in distress don't call. So it's a very, very terrible time for people that are in these abusive relationships. And I really don't see any awareness signs or emails or anything telling people what to do if they're in this situation. And it's really worse now. If you're at home with this abuser, how hard it is to get help. So I'm asking again, the police, the administration, whatever it takes, especially on a small island where we all care so much about each other, at least to get awareness out there. In Paris, they actually had a code number so that these women could go into the drugstores and simply give the code and they would call 911 for them. But this is a very, very serious situation, and the time now with all the stress on everybody in every situation, but in this case, the stress is really worse. So I'm just hoping for some awareness to be presented for these women. And again, thank you all so much because you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Chief Press, maybe you could take a look at that and see what we can do. I don't know what programs we've got going on, but I think that what she says made a lot of sense. Next caller.
Next caller will be phone number ending in 4400. Caller, please speak now and state your name and address.
My name is Daniel Kern, 512 Hampton Lane. I want to bring another subject on the floor. I've received a letter from the Water and Sewer Department that I have to connect my house to the sewer by a certain date of this July, upcoming July. Does anybody know whether this date will be extended? Because I can't see how I'm going to get this job done with what's happening by the deadline.
We'll be giving an update later this evening in our ongoing project update. We'll be giving an update on that, and we can reach out to you if you have further questions for us.
Michael?
Okay.
Michael?
Ed?
Obviously, he can't get it done because there's no work on single family homes. So therefore, I would think it'd only be fair as long as we suspend work, the date would toll until we resume work again. So you shouldn't be concerned about getting it.
Well, let's have that conversation later. Next caller.
Okay.
Mayor, that seems like the last caller.
Does anybody else want to speak? This is otherwise we're going to close public comments. There's nobody else. Let's close public comments. Chad, do we need roll call or can we just do, I think roll call is probably the best, right?
Roll call is fine.
Okay.
Okay, on the emergency resolution, Councilmember McCormick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Petros,
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola,
Yes.
Mayor Davey,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauredo,
Oh, crap. My bad. Councilmember Laredo, apologies.
Yes.
we're voting, thank
No,
you.
he can hear. He just, I muted because he had that cough. And so the woman, when,
Councilmember London needs to be unmuted.
oh, well, that's unfortunate. Councilmember London? You got to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Ed, Councilmember London, are you
Yes.
in agreement with the resolution?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is Mayor and Council members, assisted living, Councilmember London.
The reason I brought this up is because I think there's a need in Key Biscayne for people who've lived here, enjoyed living here, families are here, friends are here, but now they might need some help. And it really is unfortunate because we don't have any provisions for that. And they usually have to go off to Coral Gables to, I forgot the name of the place there, but it's very popular and people go there and there's no reason.
The Palace.
Thank you, the Palace. A little brain dead, I'm sorry. Anyway, under our current zoning, it's not economically feasible for anybody to run an assisted living. I understand under the state law, we can't have assisted living in any single family home up to like 5 or 6 people, as long as it's 500 feet away from the next assisted living. But then again, that doesn't make a lot of economic sense for any operator, especially to provide, it's uneconomic and nobody could provide good services. So my thought is to have a referendum, since it would be a zoning change, that we would provide a category called assisted living and have it on the ballot for the election in November or the primary, whichever way we can have it. And then once we have that, we can set the regulations for that as far as what the parking spaces are, what the size of the units are, but talk to various people who operate these people, like the Palace, to determine what is required, what would make it feasible. I'm sorry. 1 second. Quiet, kids. What would make it feasible for them to want to come to Key Biscayne and build an establishment for assisted living? And I think it'd be in everybody's best interest. It costs us nothing, and it'll provide something that really, I think, and I'm not talking about myself because I'm too young, but for the older people here who might decide they might need it in the future.
Okay, I'm assuming, we'd obviously have to confirm that we'd have to have this on the ballot because this would be an increased intensity or intensity of use. Is that right?
No, require another zoning classifications we don't have.
Well, the reason we'd need it on why would we have to do this on a ballot why have to do it on a ballot, I guess?
I was under the impression, Chad, you can chime in, anytime we have a zoning classification that's not on now, we'd have to have a referendum. And yes, it would be intensity within the particular unit and lack of parking spaces for multifamily. So if you looked at a multifamily, it would require less parking, smaller units.
All right, Chad?
Correct. Pursuant to section 4.15 of our charter, anytime that we add a new use or we'd have an increase in density or intensity, we would have to have a referendum.
Okay.
And we do allow them, I believe, in the institutional district, if I recall correctly. But as Councilmember London said, that there's the issues with, I think, density and intensity.
Okay. Chad,
this would only apply to multifamily districts.
Yeah, no, understood.
Or institutional.
I just wanted to be clear as to why we're doing it. Go ahead, Brett.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just wanted you to be aware of the deadlines to submit resolutions and ordinances or charter amendments or any other questions to the supervisor of elections for the primary election, which hopefully will take place on August 18, 2020. He needs to be in that office no later than Friday, May 29th. And for the general election, which will take place on November the 3rd, 2020, the information needs to be in the elections department no later than Friday, July 31st.
Okay. Let's see.
Thank you.
Mike.
Well, Brett,
So,
comment.
yes. You finished, Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm moving it forward.
No, I just want to say, I mean, I'm in full support of this. I think it's something that we should be doing. You know, I'm kind of interested in why was it ever excluded? Was it just because it wasn't thought of, or there was a reason behind it? Do you know, Ed?
Probably wasn't popular. Nobody thought about it at the time.
But I think it's fine. I'm in a big support of this because it opens it up for any private company to come in and build something if they needed it. So, and if it works.
Okay, Councilmember Segarola.
Just want to chime in also. I'm in favor of adding this classification to the zoning. I think it's definitely something I could add to the.
Yeah, no, I think we'll probably get support. Councilmember Petros.
Quick caveat to this, because I'm in support of the ideal wholeheartedly, but I don't know the process. I just wouldn't want to I would want us to be able to assure the community that there were some restrictions and what those restrictions are on this new classification, as opposed to it being sort of an open platform, which is what I understood Ed was saying, but maybe I don't know the correct process.
When he comes back with it, I think we'll have a more in-depth conversation, and I agree with you. I think, but at the end of the day, the community are the people. We get to vote on putting it on the ballot, but the community at large is going to decide if they want this or not. So that's.
But when we put it on the ballot, would we put it on with certain caveats and restrictions, or would it just be, do you want this new classification?
No, my understanding would be the actual language to the zoning code, the amendment to the zoning code would actually be the language that we'd be putting out there. Is that correct, Ed?
I think the ballot question is really limited. I think typically when you have a ballot question, it's like a certain number of characters. So from what I heard from Ed, and he can clarify, is that we would put out the question to add the zoning classification. And then if the community approves that, then we would get into the nitty gritty of defining the zoning rules and regulations and how they would apply to this new classification. Is that right, Ed?
Well, basically, I would think we'd have the zoning classification. We would state the areas where it would be applicable, such as the multifamily, institutional churches, etc. And then also put on the ballot that this would require an increase in density and a decreased number of parking spaces. Then it would be back to the council and check, tell me if I'm wrong, Chad, to actually, assuming everybody's for it, then we would discuss it to determine what the density we would want and how many parking spaces we want.
I think that there's different ways we can do it. It seems to me, though, that we would want to put maybe a ceiling for the density in the vote. I mean, you could just say, hey, adult congregate facilities or an ALF are permitted in the multifamily district, but I think we need to identify the density and the intensity because of the way the charter language is written.
Could we have
or alternatively, we could. I'm sorry, Ed, I just want to say alternatively.
No, maybe the site approval. So I'm sorry. What I'm saying is, in other words, any individual applicant who would want to do assisted living would bring their site plan to council, and council would vote on it at that point in time, which we would then have the density and parking, and the council would determine whether that was in conformity with what the village wanted and whether it was desirable and on all phases, and vote on it.
What I was thinking is, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but what I was thinking was that maybe you would say adult living facilities subject to land development regulations established by the village council. And then that would give you guys the discretion to establish what those parameters would be in the code.
Councilmember Petros's point is she'd want some parameters before this went out to a vote. I was thinking the parameters would be put to a vote. I think she's right, frankly. And I think if we want to sell this to people, we've got to tell them exactly what we're doing so we don't have the concerns that reared themselves up in 2006 about hotel condos. You know, we need to tell people exactly we want to do with our zoning code so we don't have a repeat of people getting upset about this. I think this is a great idea, but I think we've got to be very specific about what we're looking to do to the zoning code. But I think this is a conversation. I'm sorry, Councilmember McCormick, I ignored you. You were next.
No, it's okay. I was just going to suggest that it sounds to me like this is something that everyone is interested in pursuing. It makes sense to try to have as much of the details worked out before posing the question. I think that knowing the timetable for the August and November ballots may have made certainly me react in a way of feeling like there was some sort of rush. And I suppose while this would be good to do quickly, it is not an urgent situation. So perhaps the way forward is to have Councilmember London or staff working on what those parameters may be, and then look at those before getting down to.
We agree. Yeah. Do you want? Are we in agreement? Ed, go work with staff and get.
Fine with me. I'll come back with some. I will contact some assisted living facilities and ask them, in their opinion, what is required to make it economical for them to operate in a assisted living on Key Biscayne. Bring it back, then you can decide whether you like it or you don't like it.
Perfect. All right. Next.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is proposed village clerk job description. Councilmember Petros.
Hi. You're going to hear a few dog barks. Sorry. I sent this out to everybody last week, and I did see today that there was some suggested changes from Councilmember Laredo, which I fully support. I don't know if other people read them. The two things that I would ask is, do you have thoughts and concerns? There were two things that you got sent. One was the job description, and the second thing was the actual posting of the job. And at this point, I think it's really important that we move on this so that Conchita, who was nice enough to be our interim clerk, is now, having to deal with all of these issues. And I want to try to take her out of that seat as soon as we possibly can.
I agree. I think she's been wonderful, but she was not anticipating the pandemic and what it's entailed. So I would agree. So going forward with the agreement, I'm sorry, Councilmember McCormick, did you raise your hand?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you guys are really big people because selfishly, I really like having her there.
I like having her as a neighbor more. Councilmember Segarola?
I like the suggestions that Councilmember Laredo sent out today. I really do think we should be a little, elevate the requirements of the position. And I agree with Councilmember Petros. We should get this out there as soon as possible because it's going to take time anyways. And in considering Conchita's situation, we definitely should move on this. We shouldn't just let it sit, no matter if the pandemic or not.
Okay, and then the one. Okay, I'm looking at Councilmember Laredo's proposal from today. I apologize. I'm just looking. I would up the requirement to include a bachelor's or equivalent, or up to professional experience to a minimum 5 years, and then 3, add the person have a minimum 5 years in the development of public policy in the municipal state level. Okay, Councilmember London, I'm sorry, I skipped over you.
I haven't received either one, either from Laredo or from Katie.
Okay. I don't know how to answer that. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I have the one that's in the agenda. So I just want to make sure what we're putting in here. I see a lot of, it may be okay, assist with data collection and surveys pertaining to council initiatives as requested. I don't understand what would they be doing?
That was put in there to allow us to expand on some of the interests that council has expressed, not only our council, but previous councils, to try and move towards understanding the impact of the decisions we make with data. And that would have to run through the clerk potentially. It doesn't have to happen. The other thing that I think is abundantly clear that we need to think about when we're looking for somebody is there are sort of floor responsibilities of a clerk that we have to make sure are being taken care of. And we have had lots of discussions about the evolution of this role, and I full-heartedly support that, but not at the expense of losing any of the fundamental long-time responsibilities of a clerk. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, clerk, village clerk?
Well, if it is appropriate, I would like to address the council.
Please, yeah, I was about to say, once we're done with our, yes, please.
Thank you all for your kind words and for giving me the opportunity to serve the village again. As you all know, I had to retire because of health issues. And when I accepted to help out while you were looking for a permanent clerk, of course, none of us anticipated this pandemic. And it really, my job has become a nightmare. Some days I start at 7 a.m. and I end at 10 p.m. dealing with emails and phone calls and all that. And unfortunately, this is having a huge impact on my health. I won't leave you without anybody, but I cannot continue doing this job for much longer. I'm not recommending anybody in particular, but there is a Key Biscayne resident and village employee who is interested in, I don't know how to call it, probably substituting for, until it's opened up for interviews and all that. I think that person, because he's been listening to council meetings for several years now, and I would be willing to help that person out, training or whatever it's needed. He could come in and do the job while you find someone, and you can release me as soon as possible. And that person is Peter Culpa. And if you have any questions for him, he's willing to, address any questions you might have for him. And I'm sorry to do this in the middle of all this craziness, but it's really taking a toll on me.
You've got to, Conchita, you've got to take care of yourself. That's mission.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. Understood. And Councilmember Petros, I think you wanted to say something. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Laredo wanted to speak, and he's been patient. Councilmember Laredo.
Thank you. I'm so sorry that we caused this pain and suffering, and I hope that you forgive us.
You didn't cause it, Councilmember Laredo. It's this pandemic.
No, but it was. I know, and hopefully your family does not blame us for reaching out to you. But the issue of the village clerk is extremely important. It was this is an opportunity that we discussed before, that we can upgrade this position without ignoring, as Councilwoman Petra said, the basic elements. It was one of those positions in the village charter drafting 28 years ago that we had very little experience. This gives us an opportunity to build up this position by reaching out to the broadest possible talent pool. We, myself, and perhaps some of us, felt a little too comfortable with Conchita, and we sort of relaxed on the job description. But suffice it to say, we've been kicking this around now for at least 4 or 5 months. And as to Councilman London's remarks, I send it to the clerk, and she's supposed to give it to all of you. So it must be somewhere in your email. But
Right, because I did forward it.
Today we should pass something so we can post it. That's number one. And number two, and separately, and I will make that a motion. And number two, it was to ask Peter Colpa, who has been a wonderful staff person in our community, if he can phase in to have Conchita phase out and then apply formally into the process. I think it's very important. We only have 3 positions that we hire as council members, and transparency and openness has to be very clear. And we've embarked in this process a while ago. This crisis should not deviate us from that. And as to Peter, to ask him if he would be willing to take this position, if we guarantee that he will have his other job, so he's not going to have to quit and lose his job, which would be unfair. If that is the case, if his answer is yes, that would be our solution, to post this as quickly as we can. We do have, by our isolating ourselves, a little more time to review resumes and even do some interviews and get that process going. And parallel to that, a process to phase out Conchita with Peter, with the security that he will be properly considered in the pool of applicants, and on the other hand, he will not be losing his job that he currently holds. That would be my 2 motions or proposals so that we can get some action on this. This is vital and timely.
Councilmember McCormick and then Councilmember Segurola.
So was Councilmember Laredo, were you done? I don't need to jump on. Okay. I'd also like to, despite my earlier attempt at humor, I would like to thank Conchita, because I do mean it, that I really like seeing you there. And of the heroes in this, you are certainly among them. You signed up for a few hours a day for a little time period. It's turned into much, much more than that. And I am, along with, I'm sure, the rest of the council, really very grateful. With regard to the position, I am in agreement with Councilmember Laredo that we should act on something today so that we could post this job. I did not see Councilmember Laredo's comments just because I missed the email until now, but I went through them just while we're on this call, and I would agree with everything except for the very last line about in the category of professional experience, point number 3, that the person have a minimum 5 years experience in the development of public policy at the municipal or state level. While I think that's a wonderful quality that we should certainly look for in a candidate, and we can make it a priority when reviewing resumes, having been through this search for, or a transition from one clerk to another, and at that time talking with other municipalities that were looking for clerks, it was a difficult job with a limited pool. And to echo Councilmember Laredo's concerns that it'd be nice to be able to cast as wide a net as possible and get good qualified applicants and then sort through them with our own individual or joint priorities. That would be the only addition that I do not agree with. Number 3 at the bottom. Thank you.
Councilmember Segurola.
I agree with what Councilmember Laredo said. I think we should take some action tonight on this. Conchita has very clearly expressed what her preferences are, and I think we really need to listen to her. I haven't said anything yet, but I was actually meaning to, if next time I saw Peter, I've been actually pretty impressed with how he's handled this whole virtual meeting thing. And I think he definitely deserves the opportunity to be the interim, whatever you want to call it, interim assistant clerk with guidance by Conchita to get trained up. I also agree with Councilmember Laredo that he should not be forced to quit his current job for the time being. But we need to do this tonight. Conchita has made her feelings very clear, and I think we owe her that much.
Michael?
For London?
I'll make a motion that we retain Peter as the...
Councilmember Laredo made the motion. We have...
I'm sorry.
friendly amendment offered by Councilmember McCormick. We haven't had a second. Why don't you second Laredo's motion?
Second.
All right, and then I will second Councilmember McCormick's, and then I have Councilmember Petros stepping back in. I'm going to second the friendly amendment, and then Councilmember Petros, do you want to speak?
A couple things.
Vice Mayor.
Before we make this move, which I'm in full support of, I do want to hear from the manager, because if we're asking one of the people that are sitting on her side to come over and help us on this side. And I think it's important to know how, if she's can do that for us and how that would look for her. So let's start with that.
We can absolutely do it. We'll support Conchita. We'll support Pete. We'll find a way to get the work done.
Perfect. Thank you. Comment? I'm sorry, Councilmember Petros, are you done, or you wanted to say something else?
Yes, I want to say something else. Before we post this, we need to agree on a salary range, which when you got the email, you should have also seen that a survey was done in March of 2019 of different salaries of clerks throughout our county. The average was around $100,000 a year. And we can do a wide range if we're trying to give ourselves the most flexibility, but I think before we post it, we obviously need to establish that as well.
Okay. Councilman, Vice Mayor, did you have a comment?
Well, I mean, based on what was just said by Councilmember Petros, I think it also depends on what we're looking for. You know, and again, you know, if we're looking for high-level experience, that's going to cost us one amount. If we're looking for somebody who may have some experience but not a lot of experience, that could cost less. So we have to kind of understand what are we looking for at the time that we're in. Do we need that high experience right now? I think we need to come to that terms first, and then that will determine what level of salary that we'd be looking for.
Councilmember London, and then Councilmember Laredo.
I would suggest we make it a wide range, because we don't know who's going to apply for the job, what kind of experience they're going to have. So you've got a range. I think you said you can. So and then we be in the ballpark. Number two is that I didn't see either Katie
or. Out for a minute. I'm sorry. Did you say something about a specific range?
I said the range that is now that whoever looked at and said the Dade County clerk's range.
All right.
The other thing is I didn't see Louise. I never received Louise's email. Excuse me, Louise's email or Katie's regarding the clerk's position. So I haven't been able to read those things. My only question is, how is communications responsibility within that particular job description? Because we had that thing before with Jennifer about the communications within her thing, but then in her description, but then she obviously didn't want to do it. Is it in a new description for the
well, it's that the communications is actually in what's in your it's in the job description that
in the package.
In the package.
But I'm saying, but I don't know if it's staying in there since I haven't seen what Katie said.
I see what you're saying. Let me let Councilmember Laredo speak, and then Councilmember Petros. Councilmember Laredo.
Yes, I just want to accept the friendly amendment by McCormick. She actually opened up a whole new side to this for me, because I think we are anticipating, we're posting as if we were interviewing, and I think what she said at the end was, let's have this guideline, and she agrees with that statement, but she doesn't want to put it in the description, and we can make that part of our criteria as we interview. I think that is a very good suggestion. I accept her friendly amendment so we can get something out, and we retain complete legal authority as well as policy authority to decide on who we want. We are not in any way, I'm not going to lawyer this to death here by a labor lawyer, bound by any specific, you know, we have to make a policy judgment. And what she's suggesting is, you know, let's use some of these criteria that we can get in there also at the script. So I would move my, or accept her friendly amendment so we can get this voted on.
You've accepted her
and move it.
Councilmember Petros. Councilmember Petros wants to make one more comment, and then we're going to move to public comment.
Okay, the thing that I just wanted to add was the change that I made on communications, because before we had put the clerk's qualifications as director of communications, and I changed it to be communication coordinator for council, so that there's still an element of their job that has to do with communications, but it's very specific to the council and not to the village side of things. And the idea is they work with the village to give the residents full service communication. As far as the salary, I personally would recommend trying to do a range of maybe from 60,000. The lowest that I saw was 62,000 on the survey. And we can go up as high as you're comfortable with. I mean, the highest salaries were in upwards of $150,000 a year. So there is a huge range of salaries for this position.
All right, Councilmember Segurola, I mean, I think, why not just make it the range? I mean, if we get a starter that we think is going to be incredible, or we get somebody who's super experienced and we think that person's, why would we want to limit ourselves? Councilmember Segurola?
That was going to be my point exactly. If the range is 62 to 150, we can make that our range, because if you get a superstar that you want, you can pay them on the high end. And if you get a rookie that looks very promising, you can pick your number in between. You can make the salary commensurate with the experience and the ability.
Vice Mayor, and then McCormick.
Do we need to put a salary range on? I mean, if we're making it from 60 to 150, what's the point of putting it on? Let's just put it out there, and when we interview people, we determine what it's going to be. I mean, it's the same thing to me either way, but I'll vote either way.
Councilmember McCormick.
So I have a couple of points. First is a question on the big range, or what Brett's suggesting. Is it possible, if it's not inappropriate, that we ask our HR director if he has any, since this, I don't typically do this, if he has any input on, I don't know, does it indicates one thing or another to have a range, to not have a range, to have such a big range? Is there any effect on an applicant pool? That was my first question. Or perhaps the manager could speak to it.
Sure, I can start. I mean, you'll often see, based on qualifications and experience, it does inspire certain candidates to apply if there's a range that's sort of where they are looking to be hired. But based on qualifications and experience is very common.
I'm good with that.
I think that makes sense to me. And then my other questions were specific to the idea of Pete as an interim replacement or interim clerk, whatever. I just was wondering if we've heard directly from him if he's interested in it. And also the same question that I asked Melissa when we discussed it was if he would be okay with us doing a full search, and if a different candidate came across that we wanted to hire instead, is he, aware and ready for that kind of situation?
All right.
I know Peter is available if you call on him.
Yeah, Pete, you want to speak to that?
Well, my only concern is that if we're voting on it right now, well, I guess it's an offer. It's not, we're not forcing him to go there.
There he is.
Good evening, Council. I just wanted to say what an honor and privilege it is to be considered for this, and that I do understand the terms, and I do completely agree to them. I have no problems. If there is the better candidate out there, after you've tried myself out, please. It's for whatever is best for this village.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Councilmember Laredo, you had one final comment, and then let's move this forward.
Yes, I'm a little bit shocked of the range 150,000. If some of the people I know already in Key Biscayne said they're clerks for 150,000 in a small community of $35 million company, it would be bad. So I now kind of either lower that substantially or leave it out as the vice mayor suggested, and tie myself to the philosophy of McCormick to leave things broad so we can then, and there's nothing to preclude us that if we find a super person that we can go to 150 but to put that out for 150, I don't think it's a good PR for our taxpayers. And I'm sorry. I thought it was more like between 60 and 100, but not 100.
I think
high.
Your point is taken. Councilmember London, then Councilmember Segal.
I disagree with Katie. I think the change for Director of Communications to stay Director of Communications and should not just be limited to the council. There's no reason to duplicate the job.
So you think that the clerk should also be the Director of Communications?
That's correct.
Okay.
The only thing I would say on that, sorry to just jump in, is that we tried that with the last new hire of a clerk, and she, although extremely capable as a person, found it a very difficult job to do, not being part of the manager's administration. I'm just sharing, I'm sure you don't agree, but I'm sharing with you what happened when we tried it that way. And I understand that we had a discussion that if we were to change it and limit the aspects of communication that the clerk had, instead of trying to continue to make it director, that we would address that in the salary, that the job was indeed getting smaller or responsibilities less, so that we wouldn't be duplicating the salary, was my understanding. I didn't think it worked well. I thought it was really hard.
Councilmember Segarola.
I just want to say, I just want to point out that in my personal experience, if you leave out a salary range from a job posting, a lot of people will hesitate to apply because they will have absolutely no idea what they're getting themselves into. Right. I mean, I see the reasoning behind it, but it might create a lack of applicants, or we may miss out on applicants if you don't let people know what they're getting themselves into. That's it.
Okay, Vice Mayor. Okay, Vice Mayor, and then
I disagree with Councilmember London. I still do not think communication should be separated from the administration. Our clerk does not work underneath the manager. They work separate, and I think administration, any organization, should hold the communications part, which is extremely important. I'm not saying that the clerk can still do communications on behalf of the council, on behalf of the board. But I think when it becomes the village, the main meat of it should be coming from our administration. From the salary, again, like I said, if we're not comfortable paying somebody $150,000, I don't know why we want to get those candidates to be calling us who want $150,000. That's why I do agree with Councilmember Segarola. If we do put an amount, we need to know what we're willing to do and what we're not. However, there's another side, like Ed and Allison, that you don't want to limit it. You want to see what's out there and see what they're looking for. You don't know what you're going to get. So again, I'm either way on that one, but I understand both sides of it.
All right, let's do this. Councilmember Petros, and then we're going to have a vote on whether or not we're going to do a salary range, and if we're going to do a salary, what that range is going to be. Councilmember Petros.
I would just like to add that the survey definitely included municipalities that were much larger than ours. So when you're looking at the top end of the salary, that may not fit our community. And I would be comfortable without posting the salary. I would also be comfortable with keeping it at a lower range if people would prefer that. Two other points. I'd like us to give some direction on, or ask, not direction, but let's ask Conchita how much time she would have to be able to work with Pete. Would it be a month that you could help him with the transition, and what your expectations are in that arena? And then also the last thing is, once we agree on what we're posting, I'd like to know if we should be running this, and we could ask the manager if we could have our HR director receive the potential job applicants, or if we have another process that we'd be more comfortable with.
All right, let's do this. Let's open this up for public comments now, and then we'll go with votes.
Can I answer Councilmember Petros first?
Yes.
I can help Pete as long as he needs it, as long as I only work like I volunteered from 8:30 to noon. Half a day, I think I can manage, and anything he needs, I'm there for him and for the village. The village is very important to me. I was part of the incorporation process, so it's my baby too. And
Thank
as
you.
far as if I may, even though this question was not asked of me, but I had a couple of clerks interested in how our process was going to be for hiring and all that. And the first thing they asked was the salary.
Okay.
Let's throw it out there.
All right, let's.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add to that also, to answer Councilmember Petros's questions and dovetail off what Conchita said, to your point, if there are folks that are interested that are looking at the salary range and this is already being discussed, perhaps putting a range and narrowing what is being asked, I think now is the time before the job description goes out. The question as to whether or not communications is going to be within the manager's office or the clerk's office has been discussed for a long time now, and I would advise that the decision be made at this time before the job description is put out, so that people really know what they're getting into. And if I can throw in my 2 cents, I do believe that communications should be in the manager's office so that we can holistically work, most effectively for the village. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. All right, let's go to, we're going to have public comments. I've got, I know a few other council members are going to want to, we're all going to have comments, I think, but let's open it for public comments. Let's get through public comments right now. If you make the question, anybody who wants to speak, *9 on your phone. Pete, do you have anybody signed up?
I don't see anybody right now. Also, just raise your hand if you're using the actual application, if you wish to speak. Nobody's popping up, sir.
Closing public comments. Councilmember Laredo?
Yes, I don't know how many, sometimes we just don't conclude anything. I think the discussion of communications has already been discussed at least 3 different times. And the council has decided directly or indirectly that we want it on the manager's office. We keep retrying the same case. So as far as I'm concerned, the way it's drafted is fine. We do have a need in the manager's office, and we already have hired somebody. Number one, so that's out of the way. The second one, I would bring the salary down. If you want to have a range from 60 to 120, it is erroneous to think 150 is a very, very large community village clerk. We are a $35 million company. We already have disproportionate. You heard my number of people making over $100,000, $150,000. As exposed that people are voters and taxpayers will have a shock effect, and it would be detrimental to the process. So it's a balance between not having anything and turning people in. By the way it's done, in at least in the boards I'm in the corporate world, is we go, and when they call in with the salary, is done through the human resources person that gives them the range. But I mean, here, this is a public policy issue, and I would suggest as a compromise 60 to 120,000, and that would bring a broad, I think, a pool of candidates that we can then make decisions as to salary, the scope of the work, which we talked, and Councilwoman McCormick told us we can bring up all those questions then. So I would just move it in that sense. I made the motion. I would make that amendment and call the question so that we can move on this issue, because we seem like not to be able to do things. We've been talking about this for quite a few months. And now Conchita is forcing us again to focus and get it done. And this is the perfect solution, coupled with the very generous, typical of a gentleman that he is, Peter's acceptance of the terms that we described, to have him take the position and then apply, and then he's got his job guaranteed. So I would make a motion to call the question with the 60 to 120, and also I already said that I accept the friendly amendment from McCormick on dropping that paragraph she doesn't agree with, which I think she's right, and so that we can decide. Okay. Time is of the essence.
All right.
That would be
on the salary range. Where do we stand on that?
60 to 120, Councilmember Laredo said.
That's his motion. I'll second the motion. Do we have, are we good on that, or where is everybody on it? Councilmember.
Can I just ask, I just want to make sure that I'm aware of where we're at. This is leaving the agenda job description as is, with communications area adding Councilmember Laredo's additions with the exception of that one part that I asked to remove, keep
Right.
putting the salary range in at 60 to 120. Is that correct?
Yes, as far as I understand it, yes.
I'm ready to vote if anyone else is.
Vice Mayor?
I just think that I like the idea. Let's do the 60 to 120, but it should be based on experience and qualifications.
You want to call that out specifically?
I think so.
I agree with that because I do feel the 120 is high, and because we are such a small community, and I also feel that, you know, it's sometimes because we do everything in the public, it can get uncomfortable when you're getting down to the wire and having that conversation with a person. So the clearer we can be up front, I think the better. So I agree with Brett adding that.
All right, we do have somebody from the public who just raised their hand or low. Yeah. 3-3 Christian. Pete, have you got that?
Hello?
State your name and address, please. You have 3 minutes.
I saw that one coming, I gotta say.
How'd you see that coming? Oh, well.
Apologize.
Because of the hesitation when he was saying his name, he wasn't confident enough.
Mayor, with all due respect, you had already closed the public comment.
I know, but I you know, we saw that person, so my bad.
Do you guys not see?
What?
Do you guys not see 120,000 maybe being too high?
Too high?
Yeah. No?
No.
For starting the position?
We don't know at the start.
I think it's high.
I think it's high because every year we got to move it up a little bit, and you know,
this
there's
is
increases.
based on experience. Again, suppose we get somebody who's got control and wants to come into this job.
Okay.
Mike.
Yes. Ed, did you have a comment?
And I would change the word experience to qualifications.
Okay.
So
You might
based
somebody's
on
very qualified, but doesn't have a lot of experience.
Okay.
And experience
you,
requires qualifications. In the job.
Councilmember Lauredo, or I forget who made that motion. Do you accept that, the qualification instead of experience? Is that a consensus?
No, I don't. Can I speak now?
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Laredo. You were addressed.
I don't understand what Councilman London is suggesting.
What he's saying is that rather than the salary range, what we're going to do is 60 to 120 based on experience. And what Councilmember London is asking is a friendly amendment of based on qualifications, not based on experience.
That's fine.
Okay.
It can be qualifications and experience.
And or experience. Perfect. How about?
Yeah, and or experience. Come on. We got to get something out, folks.
I'm right there with
I think we're ready.
All right, let's call the
All
question.
right.
Okay, shall I start with the motion on the salary first, from 60 to 120 based on qualifications and or experience? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed? Motion carries. Then
Chief, we
on-
should have a roll call vote, please.
Hold on, now roll call vote on the position, on the job description.
what about on the amendment made by McCormick?
Now, it was a friendly, he accepted the friendly amendment.
Okay, so now on the job position,
Yes.
is that what you're telling me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Councilmember Moss? I mean, Vice Mayor Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Petros?
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola?
Yes.
Mayor Davy?
Yes.
Councilmember Lauredo?
Yes.
Councilmember London?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Do we need a motion regarding Peter?
I move Peter's hiring as an interim village clerk with a clear support of the council that he would, if he wishes to apply, just like McCormick Atkinson, he is guaranteed his job back.
I second that.
If he's not.
Was that? Thank you. Shall I do a roll call on this one too?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, on hiring Peter Culpa interim. Mayor Davey,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauredo,
Yes.
Councilmember London,
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Petros,
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I just need some clarification. As far as, obviously, so Pete is going to be the officer for the village as interim clerk. Is that correct? And then Conchita, is she going to now be just a resource?
Right.
And, okay. And I guess, is the village still paying Conchita as well as then Pete will stay at the same compensation, just so, we understand that?
Right. I still would have to work probably one more week because I haven't been able to do any minutes. I've been so busy doing everything else. So I don't know if council, I guess, has, trust me with keeping my own time. I'll be very honest about that, as I've always been about everything whenever doing my job, but it will be up to whatever council decides.
May I?
Yes.
Councilmember Laredo?
Yes, Conchita, we do trust you. And Counselor, just work it out, please. We're making policy. She is saying, in essence, that she will get off salary. A week. I think probably better is 2 weeks for Conchita, but if you feel 1 week, but if he comes in right away, you should have a little relief immediately starting tomorrow, hopefully. And they just work out the details. So yeah, we don't want to have two salaries.
Yeah, I think at the most, it would probably be 2 weeks at the most.
Exactly, that's fine.
And then help Peter as needed.
Perfect.
That's needed. Thank you.
Councilmember Segurola,
You're the best.
Were you waving your hand?
Yeah, the bigger question that Chad asked is, what are we going to pay Peter? Because he's going to continue doing the IT right into this position.
Sorry, my understanding was that he was going to go into the clerk's office, and I thought I heard the manager say that they would figure out how to position. I don't know that he can, in these times, do both jobs. Is that what was
the manager's going to need some time to get somebody else doing that job, if they can find one. And then if and when, let's say, Peter does not end up being the village clerk, I definitely want him to be able to go back to his prior job. So you have a lot of moving pieces that we got to figure out how they're going to work.
Is the manager able to speak to that?
Yeah, we can work everything out within budgeted funds and deliver the level of service. And when the council is ready to hire, we'll be able to pivot back. So we have a plan in place.
Okay. Perfect.
Sorry, so your plan in place would allow for Pete to go to the clerk's office pretty much exclusively, except for helping out, or doing both?
No, to do the job of the clerk's office, and we could backfill the position with contract, and then depending on which way the council goes, we'll happily receive Pete back in his previous role, or he can stay as clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
So next item, are we ready for the next item?
Go to the next item.
It's the village manager's report, ongoing project update.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to...
Real quick, before we do anything, I think clerk and manager, do not allow anybody else. Pete's going to run allowing people into the meeting. I know we have 3 people waiting, but we're going to operate from this side on that. So don't allow anybody else in the meeting. We'll deal with that here. All right?
Sure. So our ongoing project update, I'm going to ask Mr. Jake Ozaman to give us the update on both our Army Corps feasibility study project as well as septic, and also address the question that came up earlier about the extension from Water and Sewer Department on the connection.
Good evening, Mayor and the council. The first update I have is the shoreline protection program. In early March, the Army Corps Jacksonville Planning Department processed a waiver request for a 2-year timeline for the feasibility study. And they also asked for additional $1 million. So this additional 1 year as well as $1 million, if it's approved, will allow Key Biscayne to be included in the feasibility study. As of early March, the district had Jacksonville approved as well as South Atlantic Division. Now this request is at Washington, D.C. with the Office of Assistant Secretary of the Army. In addition, in March 24, the County delegation led by the Congresswoman Donna Shalala sent a support letter for this waiver directly to Army headquarters, and they acknowledged the receipt. So it was moving well up until this crisis. We haven't received an update, but if we do receive an interim, we'll provide the council with additional information through the manager's office. As far as the second update for the sanitary sewer collection, septic conversion, from March 9 to April 7, there were 9 additional properties that were connected to sewer and no longer in septic. We did reach out to the Miami-Dade County Durham as far as extension of the deadline. A number of residents called us. The village doesn't control deadline. It's controlled by the county. The county stated that it is very likely there will be an extension to current deadline. However, there is no formal decision being made at this moment. So once we know more, we'll let our residents know. So there's no extension as of now, but it's very likely that there will be a few months of extension added. That's all I have.
Okay. Madam Manager, anything else? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Petros.
I was just curious if this falls under our umbrella of essential services. It's an outside job that gets done. And is there a way to try to work with our residents to get these things done as soon as possible? Because that is our goal.
So you are correct. So the construction restriction was for multi-family dwellings. So outside and single family home construction can continue so long as the CDC guidance for social distancing is honored and PPE protective gear is worn. So to the extent that, folks can get contractors to come out and do the work, I would acknowledge that it is somewhat inconsistent with our mission with regard to COVID, but I think we need to find the balance, and based on our current order, the work would be permissible under those guidelines.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you. Any more updates, Madam Manager?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. Just want to remind the public at large, let's, be safe, stay home when you can. Let's keep our social distancing and let's do what we can. Wear your masks where you can, and let's flatten this curve. Thanks. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.